want to get more reaction to Strauss-Kahn's decision to resign now. Going to get another top economist's take on who might be the right candidate to replace him at the IMF. Joining me in the studio is Paul Donovan, Deputy Head of Global Economics at UBS Investment Bank. Paul, thanks so much for coming in. Good to see you. So, you know, we've been speaking to the Swedish finance minister, and he clearly threw his support behind his French counterpart, Christine Lagarde. And much has been said about her level of experience and understanding of the region's problems, her negotiation skills. But I'm thinking that emerging markets aren't going to make it too easy for France to take over this post.
Well, I mean, ultimately, emerging markets don't have a huge amount of say. They don't have that many votes. Frankly, they're not that significant in terms of the IMF. In all honesty, they're not that significant still in the world economy. They make a lot of noise. There's a lot of process on them. There's a lot of dynamism there. They're still not that significant, which is reflected in our IMF weighting. The G7's got about 40% of the votes. That's 7 countries. 7 developed countries have got 40% of the votes. Throw in Europe, you know, most of the votes are coming from developed economies. I don't think that emerging markets could stop this. And I don't think Europe's going to give up this post if America doesn't give up the presidency of the World Bank. So, you know, I think we're stuck with the status quo.
So we're not on the brink of a change where we see that the sort of economic balance of power shift in the world to emerging markets necessarily reflected in organisations like the IMF. Who takes the helm of this organisation?
Well, we've got to distinguish here between the stock and the dynamic. The balance of power has not shifted in terms of the stock. You know, the most significant part of the world economy is the US and Europe. End of discussion. 70% of the world economy is the OECD. The growth dynamic, yeah, that's shifted, that's fine. But when we're looking at this sort of thing, it's very much the stock that matters. And that, I think, is going to be where the main focus is. To be perfectly honest, in my view, this whole debate is utterly absurd. We should be putting in the most competent person to run the IMF, not based on nationality. You know, if I had my way, we'd put the most competent person in there. Unfortunately...
Who do you think that might be?
Well, I mean, there's a number of very, very good qualified candidates. There's some excellent central bank governors out there who've got a wide depth of experience. Mervyn King, for example, very, very good. We've got some very good academics in the United States. We've got some very good people who've come out of the IMF or the World Bank in the past who could go forwards. But it's a pipe dream. You know, competence is not going to be the determining factor. Competence just isn't an issue when it comes to something like the managing director of the IMF, unfortunately. It's one of the least important criteria.
And what about the potential implications, all of this, for the European debt crisis, given that we're in a situation right now where Greece is asking for more aid, there's pressure from Germany for Greece to make fiscal adjustments, and we've had a bailout just agreed for Portugal? Well,
I mean, as far as Europe is concerned, the IMF is, as an institution, bigger than any individual. Having said that, Strauss-Kahn was very clearly influential as somebody who understood the problems and could bring together the political leaders in the Eurozone. What I think this does is perhaps slightly increase the pressure on Europe to actually get its own act together. There is a case to be made for saying, well, the IMF shouldn't be involved in Europe at all anyway. I mean, this isn't a current account crisis. It's not a balance of payments crisis. This is, you know, an internal issue. I mean, the IMF isn't sending a delegation to California to deal with their fiscal problems, so why should it be involved in Europe? Obviously, having become involved...
So there could be less IMF involvement going forward?
There could in the future. And ultimately, I mean, to solve the problem of Europe, which is the euro doesn't work, Europe's got to solve that problem. Europe's got to move towards fiscal union. Europe's got to sort it out on itself. You know, a fiscal union in Europe is not going to be created by the IMF. It's got to be created by the Eurozone
And just
governments.
A very quick one. How important is it for the IMF to move quickly on this? Could the leadership vacuum start to create jitters in financial markets at some point?
I don't think so. I don't think it should. We've had plenty of these leadership vacuums at the IMF in the past. It's not an overwhelming problem.
Great. Thanks so much for coming in, Paul Donovan. Great to have you with us on the show.